All right, so we got it. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to hold interest rates steady as expected, but signaled that the Fed will still cut rates this year. There's no indication as to when that will happen. The bet's still on the street. That could happen as early as June. Jerome Powell is expected to hold his post-FOMC press briefing within the next 30 minutes. After the end of his two-day policy meeting, the U.S. Central Bank has retained its benchmark overnight borrowing, what to call the Fed fund rate, between 5.25% and 5.5%, where it's been held since July of last year. So the officials at the Fed are penciling at least 3/4 percentage points cut by the end of this year, at least 0.75%. Let me bring in Nnamdi Nwizu, the co-managing partner at Commercial Partners, for some insights on the Fed decision. As hot as it is, the worry about inflation, rate signaling, and more. Let's take it from here. Thank you so much. It's good to have you here this evening. As it's just hot off the press. This is in line with expectations.
Yes, definitely it is.
Yes.
I mean, looking at what, if I looked at all the indices, looked at all the predictions that people had made, average predictions over the last few days has shown that it was expected that the Fed would keep rates steady and signal, for still that they'll still have 3 cuts, and exactly what has happened today.
Interesting what this really is. But the bet earlier in the year was that the Fed will cut in March. That didn't happen now. It looks like everyone is going to push the cuts most likely down from second half of the year. Would that be your outlook?
Yes, I mean, expectations will be from June. If you consider the fact that the economy is still flying, inflation is still above their target at 3.2 versus their target of 2%. We continue to see the labor market. The labor market is pretty strong. If you look at all the various GDP growth, it's still pretty strong. So look at all of that. I guess they'll be worried about cutting too quickly and heating up the market. So you're trying to get inflation under control, and then come and cut at a point when the economy is still, steaming ahead. So they need to be careful. So 3 cuts expected. Some say June, some expect maybe it happens a little bit later than that. But most people expect that from June we'll start to see, at least the first cut.
This is still the Fed as we speak in terms of the economy. You got a big election, U.S. election later. I'm sure that's going to be a major watch for everyone as well. Sure. And what happens to inflation, as you said? Do you think the Bank of England, the ECB, will likely also tread more cautiously now that the world #1 central bank has decided to hold?
Yeah, I mean, we saw rates have come down in the UK, so most probably also looks more positive. At the Bank of England will also look to cut rates somewhere down the road. So when the Fed cuts rates, then it helps the others people also do the same, because they're looking at strengthening of the currency, right? Nobody wants to have a weak currency at a point in time when the Fed is pushing up rates. You don't want to be cutting rates. You could have some sort of imbalance in your economy. So the fact that the Fed's going to do it makes it more likely that we're going to see the Bank of England and we're going to see the ECB do the same. And we saw a sharp drop in inflation in the UK, so that definitely points more towards a cut coming very soon from them.
The market seems to like what just happened. I'm just looking at the Dow's up sharply, S&P, Nasdaq's up.
I mean, the dot index still points at the 3 cuts. So for everybody, people are positioning. That's just basically what it is.
So just punch the button. Yeah. Interesting. But again, if we're looking at the big picture, I'm sure you took notes yesterday when the Bank of Japan decided to end this ultra-negative regime of interest rate since 2007. So it looks like, in a manner of speaking, interest rates moving. So if you look at that in Japan, at the Far East, you're looking at the Far West with the U.S. What's your reading of these issues for how do you think Frontier Africa should read the tea leaves of these big boys, central banks' rate decisions?
So, I mean, basically different economies in different countries, different continents facing different challenges. Right, so if you look at Nigeria, for instance, you still have spiraling inflation, while in the U.S. inflation is coming down. So for those countries, look at Egypt, for instance, that just recently increased rates despite the fact that they got huge inflows from UAE. They're also getting money coming in from IMF, about 8 billion, around 35 billion from UAE. Despite that, they pushed up their rates. TB rates in Egypt about 30%. So different people are facing different things at that point in time. So if you're saying, if for instance, the US Fed wants to drop rates, or is expected to drop rates, then ideally the Bank of Japan should not be increasing rates, but they're also facing their own challenges. So, and they're trying to also tighten the market. They're reducing their own version of QE and trying to reduce purchase of bonds and all of that. So they're also, everybody has their own challenges that they're facing. And based on those challenges, you're going to more or less craft your monetary policy all around that. The good side, though, is that when those rates start to come down, then you start to see U.S. funds, who naturally are the biggest funds in the world, start to look for value and start to look for where they can go out to go and get value. So,
outside the shores.
Yeah, so they start to look at, the likes of Sub-Saharan Africa and co. And then that would help the Eurobond market. We've seen it distressed over the last 1-2 years, Sub-Saharan Africa Eurobond market, but this will help people or help the countries be able to issue again, refinance their debt, and hopefully put themselves in like a better condition. Okay,
we're going to get to the Eurobond a bit later, but what's your reading of the recent recovery of Naira's at the FX market? How should investors what should that mean for investors who are looking to pitch into Nigeria's assets, financial assets, that is?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's great that we are seeing some appreciation, because we saw a deep depreciation. We're talking about 50-60% on the power market. It got to about 1,009, official market about 1,650 or thereabout. We saw that today it's come down to about 1,004. Yeah. Central Bank has taken quite a lot of steps. The last one was the introduction of the SIM retail Smith's window. So they started selling FX once again to retail investors, or to the end clients rather, not retail investors. So all of that seems to finally be yielding fruit, coupled with the tight monetary policy environment that we find ourselves. When you see treasury bills, effective yield about 26%, 27% at issuance, right? So for local investors, first of all, or speculators, do I buy treasury bills, or do I invest in the currency or speculate on the currency? So those kind of returns takes people away from that. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of, say, manufacturing sector and co, or Nigeria as a whole, it's fantastic, because inflation that we've had over the last, I'll say maybe last 8 months or so, has been driven sharply by the US currency. Yeah, so basically you go anywhere to buy things. Even the woman on the streets, the bread seller on the streets, so, oh God, dollar don't go up. Everybody's increasing rates, increasing their prices based on the fact that you've seen, a depreciation of the Naira. So with this happening, conditions improve. Yeah. That means we should see inflation, see them start to rein in inflation. We should see prices moderate, and see increase in prices start to moderate. Better for the manufacturing sector, the real sector, who all need to buy dollars for imports, to import one item or the other. So we start to see them start to get better results. And if you look at the likes of some of these FMCGs that came up with horrible results, right, where they made huge losses on the currency, some of them haven't crystallized. So if the currency appreciates, then for them, their results also get better and the performance improves.
But we have clarity right now, just my final point, and if you can just summarize on that, in terms of, do we have clarity right now as to what the central bank and everyone is doing in terms of our borrowing plans for this year, vis-a-vis how to clean up the books that the central bank is trying to do with the ways and means and all of that, as we prepare to go to the Eurobond? Do the market have clarity? Do you folks have that?
I won't say we have full clarity. I mean, first of all, we know what the budget deficit is. I think about 9 trillion or so. We know that they plan to borrow about 7 trillion locally. They've raised roughly about 5 trillion as at this morning from the local market, which is about 8%. But then the part that we don't have full clarity on, right, full transparency, is what portion of that is going to ways and means, what portion of that is dedicated to the budget deficit. I mean, today we've seen, we saw news on Bloomberg where it shows that they just issued, I think roughly about 2.2 trillion in bonds, 2026, 2028, and I think 2027 bonds, and we just saw it to that 21%. So question there to everybody is, what exactly is happening? How did they suddenly issue 2.2 trillion worth of bonds in one day? without the market knowing. So is this for ways and means? Or is this government's way of borrowing? Is this a swap that the central bank has done to bring in USD, in exchange? They issued bonds out to the people. We're not sure. And these are kind of things that they need to explain, whether the central bank, whether it's a DMO, to give people to give the market a bit more confidence, or Ministry of Finance. Let people have clarity, because we know, or we heard that central bank is trying to ensure transparency. This government is big on transparency in the financial markets. And little things, or what I won't call them little, because 2.2 trillion isn't little, but things like this. It's a lot of money.
I know, it's a lot of money. And the yield is steep.
Yeah, the yield is steep.
It's high.
Imagine what that does to debt service over the next few years.
If you get that, you'll be smiling more than this, 21%. But again, it's Wednesday. Let's see what happens tomorrow and Friday. We still got 2 more sessions. Let's see what that clarity we got on the market. Thank you, Nnamdi. Thank you for coming for the breaking news as far as the Fed is concerned and the Nigerian market. Nnamdi Nwizu, co-managing partner at Commercial Partner.